This is Brian Bailey from Charlottesville, Virginia, and I'm joined with Mark Sweeney from Windermere, Florida. We are your guides to this episode of In the Hunt. We are going to bring clarity to this complex game of golf and help you reach your next level of performance. So if you're ready to step up your game, join us on the hunt. Welcome to this episode of In the Hunt. This is Brian Bailey here in Charlottesville, Virginia, bringing you a new episode, and we have an amazing guest this evening, set up by Mark Sweeney. So without ado, Mark, welcome to this episode of In the Hunt, and I'll let you introduce our guest.
Thank you. Today we have Brian Gay with us. I'm sure everybody's listening is familiar with Brian. Brian's been on tour for over 20 years now. 5 tour wins, went to the University of Florida, won 4 SEC championships there and a national title, right? University of Florida Hall of Famer, Hall of Fame athlete. I've known Brian for about 10 or 12 years, something like that. I don't even remember. Maybe even longer than that. And Brian, what few people know is Brian was a fairly early aim point user, and he was actually the first person ever photographed using Aim Point Express at Kapalua Mercedes Championship in 2014. I think you even shot the course record or tied the course record that weekend, that week. So Brian has been an Aim Point user for a long time now, one of the very, very first, and just had a recent win a few months ago in Bermuda. And also GameForge. We also do GameForge recaps with him and go through his stats every 3 or 4 months or so and just kind of give training guidance on that. So, Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. Nice to get you back in Florida for the Florida swing, right?
It's great to be away from California. Sorry to all you Californians, but it was a little tough out there this year with everything going on.
Not exactly eating fine cuisine while you're out there, are you? All right, so you're back in Florida for the Florida swing, and where are you playing next? Bay Hill?
Yeah, I got Bay Hill next week, and then up to the Players,
and Players,
and down to the Honda.
Right, all prepping for Masters with that win this year, right? Or last year, I guess it was technically.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait to get back there. It's exciting. It's been a while, so yeah, everything's kind of leading up to April.
Cool deal. So college, you're obviously a really good college player, and you know, we ran your stats, and we've talked a little about your putting stats. For the last 10 years you've been on tour, you're the 4th or 5th highest ranked putter in terms of total strokes gained putting. I think if we look at ranking, you're like 4th. If we look at total strokes gained, I think you're 5th. And that's over a 10-year period, which means you've been a consistently really good putter for at least 10 years. At what point did you feel like you were really, one of the top putters out there? Did you come out of college a really good putter, or is it something that you kind of developed into?
Well, I think I've always been a good putter. My game's always been built around short game and putting and keeping the ball in play. I never hit it far, so I always relied on my short game, and I would like to say I've always been a pretty good putter. I guess after a certain amount of time out on tour, you start getting recognized as a really good putter. And I don't know if you're born with it, but I don't think it was something that I had to like really acquire. I just kind of had it a lot of it for a long time.
Right. And just to give you all listening what a good putter Brian is, over the last 10 years, his average putting rank for strokes gained was 26th. And that puts him ahead of people like Jason Day, Aaron Baddeley, Patrick Reed, Zach Johnson, Jordan Spieth, Ricky Fowler. We can go on. Phil Mickelson. He's ahead of all of them by a lot over a 10-year period. And so really impressive. And I've worked with you on and off, and just watching you putt, we can tell you're really good. But what is it that you think separates you from the pack? Is it speed? Is it green reading? Is it kind of a combination of that and mechanics? Is it mentality? Like, what do you think that missing ingredient is that some guys just can't find?
Yeah, I think a lot of, guys ask me all the time, what do you do? Give me a lesson. What do you work on? And it's hard for me to answer that, because when I tell them, I'm like, they kind of laugh, and I laugh. I'm like, I don't hardly work on anything. I just kind of, I do a little bit of speed stuff, and I try to start the ball on line. I don't hardly ever work on mechanics. I certainly don't have a perfect stroke, but it's always worked pretty good. I seem when I get mechanical, it doesn't help me. So it's a lot of feel and, you know, feeling the ground with my feet and what I'm doing out there. And I guess I've been lucky in that department.
So kind of in your junior golf, I read up that you were a military brat, played a lot of military courses, and they tend to be only as nice as the commanding officer at the actual bases. So what was that like in the fact that, you know, what were some of the things that you learned as a junior growing up, playing military courses, and maybe how did that kind of set your college career and even a pro career?
Yeah. So, yeah, when I really started playing, I was in Alabama. My dad was at Fort Rucker, and my dad was a scratch amateur, played all Army team and inter service matches. So he was helping me. He got me started in the game. When I first started, I was too young to even go out there, so I just kind of beat it around the yard. And then the first summer I could go to the golf course, my mom would drop me off. I'd be out there all day. And I was fortunate because it's very unusual. They had a range that you hit the stripers with the buckets, and then they had a separate practice area where you could literally just shag your own balls. There were about 5 different greens to hit to, and I'd stay out there all day just hitting wedges and chipping and picking up the balls and chipping them up to the hole and putting and all that sort of stuff. So I actually had a pretty good facility as far as that goes. I will say that I struggled later on in college and professionally because I grew up on slow, grainy Bermuda, and when I would go up north or something, I struggled on the fast bent stuff. So that was something. It was definitely an adjustment when I started traveling more and playing across the country and the world.
So you're saying playing a lot of golf when you were young helped? How much, if any, lessons did you have in there when you were out just shagging balls and chipping and figuring it out? Like, how much of that was just you figuring it out, and how much of it was somebody actually coaching you?
Yeah, my dad helped me some, but he wasn't all. I was out there by myself or with other buddies. So all the short game stuff was just on my own, just chipping the ball around constantly all day long, chipping and putting and hitting, wedges and short irons. And I didn't really, I don't think, that first summer when I was 10 was when I really started playing like every day. And then the next year I started playing tournaments. I don't think I really had a formal lesson until maybe about 5 or 6 years later. One of the local pros at the Dothan Country Club, he helped me a little bit. Never really had a really full-time coach, a little bit in college, and then a lot more after college.
Wow. So you went through that whole college career with just a little bit of guidance, but that's about it, huh?
Yeah, I had started seeing a guy out of Birmingham a little bit, and but nothing like everybody's doing nowadays. Back then, there was no sending videos over the phone or any of that. I saw him just sparingly here and there. Didn't even have a cell phone then, so there wasn't much communication going on. Buddy Alexander at Florida, he was not so much an instructor, but he helped with developing my game and playing competitively and course management and stuff like that.
I think there's a great story there for a lot of juniors and parents out there that to learn to play golf is actually learning to play golf. Having great instructing, great technical swings are great, but playing golf is really the sole purpose of what we're trying to do. And there's a lot of ways to do there, and there's a lot of ways to do it. Not being on the range 15 hours with multiple cameras and TrackMans behind you.
Yeah,
exactly.
They can also drop their kids off all day and come get them later. They gotta like that.
Great babysitter.
I gotta love that. So you actually, what I like the fact that you grew up on Bermuda and had to learn to deal with it, because we as coaches always have people that come down from the north who are used to bent grass, and they come down to Bermuda and they just freak out. Like they can't figure out the speed differentials, they can't figure out the grain, and it just does their head in. So and chipping too, when you're if you get a little leading edge on these uphill chips, up grain chips, it can be a big shock to the system for some juniors and college players. And that's just something you just figured out, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's still, even though I grew up on it, how hard it is and tough to pitch and chip off those grainy lies. And that won't ever change. But for me, it was, the opposite. I was not used to the speed of the faster bent greens up north, and we play a college tournament up north or out west, and I was kind of lost on the greens. So I was never that comfortable with the faster speeds, and something I had to really adjust to after college and after professionally.
Right. And is that something you adjusted just by doing it, or did you find any particular method helped you on the really fast greens?
I think it was more experience and just getting comfortable on them. The more I played on them and the more I traveled to other places. But even still to this day, through all these years, I'm still not as comfortable with the greens. I don't like the greens super fast. Just kind of medium fast is good for me. And a lot of guys complain, you hear Tiger all the time. If the greens aren't rolling 12 or 13, he's complaining they're too slow.
Yeah.
If they're 10 or 11, I'm fine with it. Doesn't bother me at all. If they get to 14 is when it bothers me.
Yeah, well, Augusta's coming up. You better get used to it, buddy.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say that, but
you got about 6 weeks, I think.
I'm just going to go up to Isleworth and just putt downhill down Gray.
Downhill down Gray all day long.
Mark, just make sure you don't talk about a garage and a cement floor.
Right. Exactly.
You get a little bit of trouble there. I think it's really fascinating. Again, that kind of your arc. We were looking at your kind of your history, and you've won in 3 decades now, which is kind of cool. You won in the 2000s, you won in 2013, and you won in 2020. What do you think some of that longevity is? A lot of tour players never win, and for you to do it 5 times in over 3 decades, how do you kind of amass how that happens?
Yeah, I haven't been asked that direct question, but similar to that, just the trajectory and how my career has gone on the tour. It's kind of in 3 different parts, really. Early on, it was trying to get that first win. I was out there 8 years before that happened, and just keep believing that I could do it. Knew I was good enough to do it to finally break through. And then when I did that, I played really, really good for a few years and won a couple more times really soon after that. Then I battled some injuries and had some surgeries and had to come back from that. So then it was the fight and the recovery and the comeback from that. So I was determined from that end to get back to where I was, and started playing pretty good again a couple years ago, and just felt like, just my team pushing me and the wife pushing me out the door to keep at it and keep working and keep believing. And, lo and behold, it happened again.
Joel, only I think 10% of all players who start on tour ever win. I think it's 10% at the most is last I looked at it. And just most people don't know this, but one of my claim to fames is when you won in Harbortown, I actually picked you to win that week. I ran a statistical program and I picked you to win. I think I actually bet on you that week also, and you won.
It was a good pick.
It was a good pick, but the numbers all supported it.
You didn't even have to sweat it out.
No, it was great. I didn't even know you back then. I was like, yeah, he's earning any money already. I like this guy.
I didn't even have to sweat that one out. It was great.
How much you win by there?
I won by 10.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that part, but
mm-hmm.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was a fun one.
So most people, I don't know, what surprised me when I started working with you more is that you're a lot more numerical and kind of wanting to understand the numbers and the science than I would expect most players to be. Maybe not these days, but how do you think about, when you're talking about full swing or aim point or game forge or anything like that, it seems like you really kind of want to understand the numbers more than a lot of people. Is that an accurate assessment, or how do you think about using metrics to help your game?
I think it's a combination of, I've always been kind of a numbers guy. I've always been kind of good at math. Prior to all this technology, it wasn't as big a deal. And now you have the aim point numbers and you have TrackMan numbers and all this other stuff going on. So it was kind of natural for me to kind of get into more of the numbers because I've been a numbers guy always. Even though I always consider myself more of a field player than a technical type of player. But I enjoy that side of it. It's kind of a mixture of it. I like to know some answers and kind of mix that in with the field part of it.
And with the 2021 season kind of rolling, I know they have the PGA breaks it up with part of the 21 season in 2020, but kind of we're in the 2021 year now. Are there a couple matrix or a couple points that are really driving you that you've kind of focused in on? Like, here's some performance pieces I think I need to hit to allow me to achieve my goals for this year?
I've been focused on a few things. Some stuff with Mark on some putting things that I wasn't aware of, that weren't really there in the past. Some of the not short putts, but kind of medium short putts. And I've been focusing on that. I've been on a big kick with hitting the ball further the last few years. And I think that's one of the reasons even at 49 now, I'm stronger and hit it further than I ever have. However, I don't hit as many fairways. So I think, guys say, well, you don't have to hit the fairways, but I still don't hit it far enough to always be in the rough. I hit it further than I used to, but I was one of the shortest. Now I'm getting closer to average, which is a big difference for me. And I think going through that process, I was hitting some foul balls here and there that were costing me. So I think that's one of the key areas as well.
Yeah, I find it's interesting that you've got a really nice balance between kind of being a field player, but also backing it up with some of the numbers. When we've gone through our Game Forge analysis, and we've done it 2 or 3 times now together, is there anything that jumped out and surprised you about the analysis, or did you find that we'd say, hey, there's a little softness here, and you're like, yeah, I get that. Was it did anything really jump out where you were just like, wow, I had no idea?
I think initially was kind of the going for it stuff, which that was before I'd picked up some distance. So I was always laying up, and I was never really thinking about getting it up around the green. That was one of the first things that jumped out at me. Gosh, there's so many of those different stats that.
Yeah.
What else am I thinking of?
A lot of
some of that putting stuff surprised me. And then a couple of the short game things surprised me. Some of the wedge stuff where I think I'd slowly declined and didn't really realize it.
Which I think that's that we always talk about with really high end players. It's if you can introduce where there might be a softening happening, it's pretty amazing on how talented you all are and how fast you can close that gap. But if you don't know, you just don't know, right? So how do you think that the data has helped you again kind of close some of those gaps and allow you to perform over the last couple of years?
Yeah, like me and Mark and I got together before Bermuda, and he pointed out some of those things to me, and it obviously worked out great. I did put some more time into those 5 to 10 footers. Going out to Bermuda, I was home for I think 2 weeks before that tournament, and I focused on that, and also focused on kind of pitching wedge 9 iron, 8 iron on that. That's not a long golf course. It's hilly and windy, but there are a lot of short irons and wedge shots, and that was definitely key for me that week.
Do you find it's hard to, all the players I work with, and I do putting only, but I always find that you never come to a point where you just putt well and that's the end of it, right? There's always, speed gets a little better and a little worse. Aim gets a little better and a little worse. You're always trying to keep it kind of between the rails and keep it fundamentally sound, which it seems like you do very well. But when your putting is particularly good, or if you feel like it's particularly weak, is there one area that you think declines, or could it be any of those 3 areas? In other words, is it always because your speed is better or worse, or your start lines are better or worse, or does it just vary?
Probably speed's probably the biggest thing for me, I would say. I think I read the greens pretty well. It's not often that I'm really, really locked up as far as reads. I'm pretty good at that. I think most of the time I start it pretty well online. So I think it's a lot of it. The biggest factor for me is speed, just on the different surfaces, like being out west and then coming to Florida and Poe or Bend or whatever. It's like last week at Riviera when the wind blew 30 miles an hour. That gets a little tricky.
Yeah, downhill, downwind. Ball doesn't stop real quick, does it?
Yeah, I think that when you're really dialed in with the feel and the speed, and when you're not worried about or thinking about the speed, when it's just there, I think that's when it works out the best.
Yeah, I always find out if people, are thinking I need to hit it harder or softer, their speed dispersions get really bad really quick. And that it's hard to think your way through a better speed. Cognitively, your brain works in funny ways. And every time somebody like is short, and they're like, okay, hit it harder, then they get something go 7 feet past the hole,
Right.
versus more of a visual. Is it more of a visualization for you, or do you just try not to think anything? Like what do you think works best for you for controlling speed?
Well, I think that's really accurate. What you just said is I find that as I think about it, when I am thinking about it's really fast or slow and I'm trying to hit it harder or easier instead of looking and reacting, and the touch is there at that particular time. It's when you start thinking about too many things and how hard do I have to hit it. Then I think that's when you start declining.
Well, I think that's awesome. As a 20-year veteran of the PGA Tour, which is phenomenal, if you were able to go back to Brian Gay in 1999, just coming on tour, what advice would you have for Brian to make his transition to the tour a little bit better, and maybe give him some insight to reach his goals faster?
Advice to myself. Oh gosh. I mean, there's a lot of things that I don't know. I worked pretty hard early on trying to get there and then to stay there and try to win. I think the biggest thing is to keep believing, work hard, believe that's going to happen for you, believe in yourself, believe in your ability. I think that, it's really intimidating when you first get out there. I think it would be more tell yourself to relax and enjoy it, do what you need to do to work on your game, continue to do that part of it, but really just making yourself believe that you belong there sooner, faster, like immediate, like the young guys that come out now that they have no issues and they're just so good so early and they just come out and it doesn't bother them. When I came up, it was only, the average age on the tours dropped so much and guys are starting so much younger now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that learning curve is so much smaller now. It took a lot longer when I was coming up, I think, for guys to get used to the tour and the travel and the golf courses. And now guys learn the courses so much faster. There's so much more info out there to get and to be able to use to help with your game and play in tournaments.
I think I read a stat 10 or 15 years ago that said tour players hit their peak at about 30 years old. And now that seems really late, doesn't it? When you got a lot of 22-year-olds winning, but it was 30. And it was all the things you're saying, learning how to be on tour, learning the golf courses. For instance, when I do stats for the Masters, when you're picking a winner, usually somebody who's never played the course before, you just throw them out. First time in Masters,
Exactly.
Throw them out. Gone. Like, no chance.
They always, yeah, exactly.
But with them coming out so much younger now, and really competing so much younger, how much pressure do you feel as a more seasoned player when you're out there playing with 22-year-olds or hitting it 350? Is that something that you think about, or is it you just go play your game and it is what it is?
Yeah, like it's changed a bunch. I don't know the exact numbers, but the average age has gone way down the last few years. Guys are coming out better, sooner, younger. The distance thing is not that big a deal. Everyone always hit it further than me, even though I hit it further now than I ever did. Not everybody, but people always hit it past me. So that was something I always dealt with. I think that I just kind of rely on experience and just try not to worry about as many things and just kind of do my own deal and try not to stress about it. Just know that I've been there, done that. And you see guys come out and they want to play 3 practice rounds and they hit balls for hours and they do all this stuff. And I'm like, just chill out. I mean, you're not going to find it today before the tournament. You've got it. You're here for a reason. Everybody out there is really good. I try to go with that. And especially now, try to conserve more energy, not try to waste all my energy out there all day long trying to practice and learn stuff when it's pretty much green grass out there. I know where to hit it and what I need to do when I get out on the course.
So when you have that really low round going, when everything's just going well, what state of mind are you in, and what is that like? Are you just mindless? Are you thinking like numbers, or what is that like when you have those rounds or those tournaments where it's just everything is right?
Yeah, I think I think in that scenario, you're thinking a little bit less rather than more thoughts. I think you have less thoughts. And a lot of times if you're way under, you may not even know how many under you are. You're just kind of trotting along and you're really kind of locked in and focused, and nothing's, there's less distractions. There's less thought. You're just kind of doing your thing and cruising along.
So here's an off question I just thought of, but we have a lot of coaches that listen to our podcast in addition to players. From your perspective, what makes somebody a good coach versus not a good coach? Just on all the coaches you've had in your lifetime, which is not
names. No.
Yes, and name names. Exactly. No, of all the coaches, and it seems like you've had fewer coaches than most people, but what, from a tour player perspective or a very elite golfer perspective, what are you looking for most from a coach? Like, what are the necessary ingredients?
Gosh, I think a lot of it depends on the player, the type of player they are, how they think, how they interpret numbers or feels or mechanics. Or, I mean, there's a lot of coaches, teachers out there that may be more of a coach and a buddy and a cheerleader and not necessarily on the technical side of things. I mean, There's a lot of different variables as far as there's guys that just help you practice, push you along. There's guys that just not strictly, but they're more into mechanics or numbers or ball flight and stuff like that. I think it all depends on what you're looking for and what fits the player and their style.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely seen at the tour level, you get all those different types. You got the confidence guys, you got the technical guys, you got I just want you to be here and watch me practice, coaches. So I guess that's up to the player, just kind of find what they're looking for, huh?
Yeah, like you said, there's all kinds of different coaches and teachers out there. A lot of them are almost just cheerleaders. A lot of them do a lot more technical stuff, and some guys work well with some and not others. I mean, some guys don't want to know. They don't want to know what the club's doing or the numbers for TrackMan. Some guys want to know all of it, and they want to know the real answers, and they don't want the fluff. And I think it depends on their personality and their style.
And you kind of talked about earlier, you kind of are in 3 chapters of your career. As we're, I guess, winding towards the end of the 3rd chapter, what's the 4th chapter for Brian Gay? What does the future look like?
Well, I mean,
whatever Kimberly tells you it is.
Yeah, whatever the boss says. Well, having just won it, I won when I was 48 and 49. Now I've got about at least 3 more years worth of exemptions. So I'm in a good spot to where I can, and I'd say the last 2 years, really, it's every week. It's how old are you when you turn 50? I can't believe you're already 48 or whatever. Unfortunately, I still look kind of somewhat young.
You look 35.
And some of the younger guys are shocked at my age when they play with me or maybe not know how old I am. And so I kind of had to make a lot last year where I had to really almost divert from those conversations because it was taking me away. I'm like, I'm out here right now. I'm not even thinking about the Champions Tour. When that time comes, I'll decide on what I want to do. Fortunately, now when I turn 50, I've got options to do both or one or the other. So I'm just going to play it out and see whenever I'm tired of beating heads with the young guys and go over there, maybe do a mix of both. I'm not real sure yet.
Well, we love seeing you on TV mixing it up with the young guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun to beat the young ones.
I bet it is. What would kind of starting to wrap up here, what advice would you give to, junior golfers, even up to college level? Every junior I talk to wants to be on tour. Most college players I talk to want to be on tour. Not all of them, but most of them. What's the biggest piece of advice you give them, either whole game or just from just a putting perspective?
Gosh, I mean, as far as, it's so different now than when I grew up, but for me, it was gaining experience and playing different places and playing tournaments. Like you were talking earlier, you can't stay on the range all day. You got to learn how to play golf, how to compete, competition. against all types of players in different places. And the putting question, again, I get it all the time. I have a tough time answering it because it's something I've been good at. Of course, there's times when I'm not as good, but it was kind of always been there. So it's not something I had to always put a bunch of time into. And I get that question a lot from guys. Help me with my putting. What do I do? What do you work on? I would tell guys to tell them anything. Don't tell them anything.
Don't tell them anything.
Yeah. But the biggest thing I think is, know your game really well, learn what you do well. And then of course, know your weaknesses. And some people will tell you to keep your strengths and try to improve on some of your weaknesses. And that's something that you can get off track of if you start chasing things that you're not good at. Then some of the stuff you're really good at declines a little. So I think you got to stick to what you're good at and stay good at that and incrementally improve at some of the other areas.
I think that's perfect advice, because if you have a strength, you definitely don't want to let that degrade while you're trying to bring up something else. So I guess from a training perspective, how do you train so that you keep your strengths while chipping away at your weaknesses, which is something we thought a lot about, right, Brian? Just making sure you don't ignore the strengths.
Yeah, very much so. I always say that tour players are and high-end you're great at something. You're a freak at something. You do something different than everybody else. And if you don't protect that, you're in trouble. If you're chasing you start chasing your tail, chasing the wrong pieces, what you're great at, whether it's putting with Brian, ball striking with someone else, maybe carry distances. If you don't protect that, that changes who you are fundamentally, which I imagine. And out there, it's so competitive. You lose a little bit, you lose your card, and you end up, playing in Poughkeepsie in the whatever open
screen door open.
Yeah, that's right. I guess here's my hardest hitting question for you. It's Father's Day. You're at the Open. You have a 1-shot lead going into the last day. What's your go-to breakfast?
Oh, go-to breakfast. I'm an eggs and bacon guy always.
Yes. So. Yeah, well, and that was probably leading Brian into, we usually ask some random questions to new guests, and was that your first one, Brian?
Well, that could be.
I think that was your first question, because that was definitely not a golf question.
Well, I had to change it up, make it a little bit fun.
Yeah, gotcha. So here's mine: whiskey or beer?
Beer.
I know what Brian's is going to be now.
No, I'm going to change it up for you. What movie stops you in your tracks and you have to sit down and watch?
Casino is one of them.
It's a good one.
Yeah, for sure. Casino. Fugitive. Those old ones that you catch them on USA. You're flipping channels and they're on there and you can't flip the channel. You stop and watch some of it.
Fugitive does that to me as well.
I like the train wreck scene. That train wreck is the best train wreck.
Yes.
Hands down. All right, since Brian's not going to ask it, I'm going to ask it, but I know the answer. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Yes.
All the way.
We have yet to have a cat person on the show, I don't think.
Yeah,
you're about 1,000.
Honestly, we're about 1,000 on cats and dogs. Yeah. Brian, you got anything else?
No, that was it. I really wanted the breakfast question.
Yeah, well, you got it.
Now, if I'm not at a tournament, it's Waffle House.
Nice.
Yes. Waffle House in Augusta, right? You probably won't be at Waffle House at Augusta at the Masters. That's where us slobs would
there a day or two before the tournament.
Yeah.
I'll get to the Waffle House in Georgia for sure, at least once or twice.
There you go.
The Waffle House?
Yeah. Anything in particular you're doing to prepare for the Masters at some point?
Not yet.
Yeah. Wait till.
I'll ask you in a few weeks.
Wait till the week before, right?
We had a couple tough weeks coming up in Florida, some tough courses.
Right.
I have a little bit of a break after the next 3. Probably lock in at that point. I have a couple weeks. Probably 3 weeks before. I'm gonna probably try to get up there 2 weeks before the Masters. before I go. I'm going to go play Valero the week before, so I'm going to try to get up there before I go to Valero.
Perfect. Well, we certainly appreciate you coming on our show. Like I said, over the last 10 years on PGA Tour, you're top 5 all-time putting, which is one heck of a feat. And we love watching you. Obviously, it was great watching you win a couple months ago. Was it already that long ago? Yeah, was it November or something like that? And looking forward to the Masters coming up. Brian, do you have any final piece of advice, or Brian Gay, do you have any final piece of advice for us?
I lost you there for a second.
How about Bailey? We'll let you go. What's your final words?
Yeah. I just want to thank Brian Gay for coming on to today's episode, and really, Mark does know you. He talks about you all the time, and I've never witnessed you two in the same spot together. So this time I'll actually have to concede and say, okay, you might know him. I'm not fully invested in that, but maybe. But want to appreciate you. We appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your time, and I want to wish you the best of luck for the 2021 season and that 4th chapter, and hopefully it'll be many years from now.
And win number 6. Let's go.
Win 7 and 8. Why not?
Heck yeah.
No, I appreciate it, guys. It was great to be on. I appreciate y'all's info and insight, and all the help that Mark's done with me on the greens and getting me aware of some of the things I need to work on and to continue getting better and get that 6th win. So it's great to be on with you guys.
Let's get it. And then we're going to have a big party.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, thank you very much, Brian. Everybody out there, keep your questions coming. We love to hear them, as always. If you have any questions for Brian, send them to us, and we'll see if we can get them answered.